Hey internet. Yeah. You ever have one of those mornings where you're just kind of, yeah. I mean, it's like nothing's good. I mean, lots is good. It's just kind of, yeah. Welcome to Worldview Everlasting, your favorite YouTube addiction. Welcome to Worldview Everlasting, your favorite YouTube addiction, where we're happy all the time and everything's always good. Just there's great plans for your life and...
This episode of Worldview Everlasting is brought to you by the letter Awesome, the numbers Sweet Action, and Issues Etc. Talk radio for the thinking Christian. IssuesETC.org.
Hey, even so, little did you know, or maybe lots did you know, and totally that you knew, that you have tuned in to... And today's text is kind of, well, out of left field. Nothing against the lectionary, but at this point in my week, I'm thinking the lectionary is just insane. But I can tell you why. Today's text is John chapter 1, verses 43 to 51. The account of the calling of Nathanael. Oh, that makes sense, because, we've been in the Gospel of Mark, sort of, for just a couple of weeks, and then went through Christmas. So, okay, we got off track for Christmas, but now last week we came back in, we're in the Gospel of Mark, we're ready to go. I mean, why wouldn't we go take a look at a section out of John's Gospel about something that's utterly unrelated to anything anywhere on a day called the second Sunday after Epiphany, which has nothing particularly being celebrated about it, at least officially so. Why wouldn't we just go look at a random passage from the first chapter of John? I mean, it makes sense, right? Yikes. Well, here's the history of it, if you care. Basically, there's two major lectionaries in the world that the churches that use lectionaries at all kind of subscribe to. One's called the one-year lectionary, or the historic lectionary. This one's really quite old. It goes way, way back. Couldn't tell you when, but way, way back, hundreds of years. Largely centering around the Gospel of Matthew, but with the other Gospels peppered in sometimes. But mainly it's a study on Matthew that you do every year. Got Old Testament and epistle lessons as well, yada yada. The other one's called the 3-year, and this sucker comes out of kind of Vatican II-ish Roman Catholicism. Not that the 1-year didn't come out of Roman Catholicism, it did too, because they use the same Bible we do. In fact, I think we got ours from them, in a sense. Although, that's not fair, because Roman Catholicism is an aberration. Now I'm really off topic. The 3-year lectionary comes about post-Vatican II-ish, where they were trying to do some reforms. Rome put the liturgy into English, finally, out of Latin, which has done nothing but, destroy their membership. But hey, go figure. And so they also thought, well, let's have people get more of the Bible in their hearing. Let's have more parts of the Bible for people to hear. It's not a bad thought. And so they went from the 1-year to the 3-year, from just Matthew's Gospel to Matthew, Mark, and Luke, with John kind of thrown in largely during Mark's year. But back in that 1 year, the second Sunday after Epiphany, always, because there was only 1 year, came down to one text, and that was John chapter 2, the wedding at Cana. So what would be going on is you would have Christmas, and then you would have Epiphany with the wise men, and then you would have the baptism of Jesus, and then you would have the wedding at Cana every single year. And somehow it kind of looks like it slipped in that when they went to Luke and Mark, which both have their own accounts of the baptism of Jesus, and then both begin to tell the story of Jesus' life, who he is and what he did, they kind of thought, well, since the 1 year, which uses Matthew, we're going to keep this John chapter 2 wedding at Cana thing going on. We wouldn't want Mark and Luke to feel like they're not getting split up by John, and so we'll take the rest of the parts of John that we're not putting anywhere else and we'll shove them into that week, just kind of out of the blue. And so in both Mark and Luke, you have portions of John chapter 1, the calling of the first disciples, just kind of slipped in between the rest of the narrative. And then you also, at the same time, skip over the temptation of Jesus, contrary to what I said in the sermon on Sunday. Oh my goodness, am I a failure. You skip over the temptation of Jesus and reserve that for the first Sunday in Lent. So that, I guess, in a sense, if you're looking at this, like what the gospel writers themselves are trying to say doesn't matter, all we care about is the stories. Yeah, you got the baptism of Jesus and then the calling of disciples, and then next week in Mark, Jesus is going to start to preach. So I guess that kind of fits. It's just not what the text actually is doing. Oh, and it drives me nuts. Anyway, that's maybe part of why I'm not so hot about even talking about it today. Although it is a good text. That's the sad thing. John's my favorite gospel. It's got tons of good stuff, and this section about Nathanael and the calling of Nathanael not only has a huge debate debate turn point switch in it that maybe doesn't come across in the English, but it's debated amongst theologians. But I think the answer to that debate is the answer to that debate because it is the whole point of the entire Gospel of John. So it's not like there's nothing to not be excited about. It just is like, oh, can't we just not have this multiple personality disorder when it comes to the lectionary? I mean, when you keep cutting on my gospel like this, I just don't think it works so fine. Yeah, anyway, here we go. John chapter 1, verses 43 to 51. Jesus has been baptized. John the Baptist has pointed him out as the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world, to the extent that some of his own followers, namely John and Andrew, end up following Jesus off. Jesus calls them. He renames Simon to Peter. And then, the next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. Now, Galilee is this huge region in northern Israel, so it's not like he's, picking this narrow spot. He's just he's going north, and going north, he found Philip. Was he looking for Philip? I don't know. I mean, actually, that's a really deep question. I mean, how much does Jesus actually know about what he's planning to do when he goes and what he does? How much is his deity knowledge of everything veiled within his humanity limitedness? When he was like 3 years old, was he already, writing down his sermons for later? Or was he just a 3-year-old that, later would learn from the scriptures what he should preach? I kind of lean towards that second. So I'm thinking more Jesus is just actually going up to Galilee, and he ran into this guy named Philip. And something about Philip told something in Jesus, who happens to be God and does have all knowledge, and the Spirit is working with him. Talk to that guy, and he says to Philip, follow me. Akaluthe, basically literally meaning to come behind me, to get in line and follow right after me, almost in like in marching orders. But it can also mean, come along beside me, walk with me, listen to me, all these kinds of things. So there's this nice kind of metaphorical image about being behind Jesus, though, and you kind of want to pick up on that nobody's leading Jesus. Jesus is leading everybody else, and we as sheep are following in his train. Also kind of cool, because whenever there's going to be a war with the devil and you're following Jesus, guess who's in front? Ha! Guess who takes the blow for you? Ha! That's kind of the point too, right? So he says to Philip, follow me. And Philip did. That's kind of the important thing. Hey, look, that guy looks interesting. Yo, you, come here. Let's chat. Follow me. Would have been way cooler than that, though. I mean, the charisma just had to be amazing on this man. But it wasn't like, yo, come on, man. It was the opposite of that. It was like, yeah. I mean, can you imagine the ultimate army general who, whenever he would talk, he'd just hang on his every word, and he'd say, go die for me, and he'd be like, yeah. That's kind of like, ugh, follow me. I can't even begin to do it because I just don't have that kind of power. But Jesus does. Notice the electing action, too. Who's doing the calling? Did he say, come, I invite you to make a decision to follow me? No, he says, follow me. You, come. And that word creates faith and pulls the man to him. Anyway, we're off topic a little bit, although that's leading us where we're going to be going. How does one learn to believe in Jesus? They're in the city of Andrew and Peter. They found Philip. Philip then kind of leaves the group and goes and finds Nathanael, a friend of his, no doubt, and said to him, quite a statement. Eureka! Eureka, men. From Eurisco, which means, I found it. Except Eureka, men is, we found it. We have found the one, him, the dude, of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets, egrapsend, scripturad, wrote down. You hear the word engrave in the grapsen, right? Yeah, to write down, to actually put something into script. So Moses and the prophets scripted stuff down, and they were writing about someone who everyone knows we're waiting for. We call him the Messiah, and guess what? Eureka! We found him. Quite a statement for, only as far as we know, having heard the words follow me from this guy. Chances are there's a little more than that going on. Jesus is doing talking, right? And when Jesus talks, people tend to listen. And when people are listening and believing, it tends to be rather affirming to them about, well, this is the Messiah guy. Surely this must be the Son of God. Although we're going to see here again how easy this comes for Nathanael, who doesn't need a lot of, edumification in order to be convinced of what's going on. Kind of the point, sort of the point. We have found the one whom Moses and the prophets spoke about. His name's Jesus, the son of Joseph, and he's from Nazareth. And Nathanael's like, what? Yeah, dude, is it even possible for anything good to come out of Nazareth? Now, I can't really make a good joke here without offending somebody, but I guess I could just offend everybody anywhere. But think of that place that you would never want to live because it's just really lame, and when you go there, you just can't wait to get away, and, well, that's Nazareth. Yeah? The place that nothing good comes out of. Yeah? Detroit, maybe? Yeah? Gary, Indiana? Yeah? Texas. Did I say Texas? I didn't say Texas. No. Everyone likes Texas. Take a joke, guys. Take a joke. Can anything good come out of Nazareth, he says? Philip just says, come and see. That is, let me take you to the actual Jesus, the guy who speaks these words that have convinced us he's the Messiah, and come and see. Ooh, that's interesting. See. Just look at him? Maybe this is going somewhere, though. Jesus saw Nathanael coming and said of him, look, behold, idiot, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no dolos. No, not dollars. Dolos, often translated as guile or deceit, treachery or cunning. That is, what you see is what you get with this guy. He's someone who wears his emotions on his sleeve, and he basically says what he thinks. The filters aren't working. You know what I'm saying? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. He's naive and, in a sense, kind of good, childlike even. Check it out. This guy, yes. This is what Israelite-ness is really about. Just being forthright, having honesty, knowing what you hear, and saying what you hear. Nathanael isn't really buying it at this point. His next response, you can take this in a couple of ways. He answers him and says, "How do you know me?" Now, this could be like, of course I have no deceit. But how do you know this? I don't think that's the way it really is. It's more like, dude, I just walked up to you. How on earth can you possibly try to tell me that you know who I am? Come on. He's having no deceit here. He's being straight up. It's like, dude, quit showing off. You got no crystal ball. Jesus answers him, "Before Philip called you, I saw you under the fig tree." Yeah, under the fig tree. Saw you there, Random. But it must not be random, because somehow this little statement completely and utterly transforms the way Nathanael's seeing the situation. Now, there have been some scholars who have said that this was just Jesus walking by and noticed Nathanael under a fig tree before that, and so brings it up now. That really doesn't answer the question of how he happens to know that he's an Israelite who has no guile. So I'm not one to go that direction. It's more like Nathanael was out doing something under the fig tree that, well, whether or not he was supposed to be doing it, he didn't think anybody else would ever know he was there. He's kind of doing his own thing. Maybe he was reading the scriptures, praying. I don't know. Maybe he was burying the gold he stole. I don't know. One way or the other, Jesus is convicting him of the point that Jesus is able to know things other people aren't supposed to know. Behold, I saw you under the fig tree. And he basically falls on his knees at that point and says, "I make a decision to follow Jesus." Actually, no, that's not what he says. He just says, "Teacher, whoa, you are the Son of God," which is a massively amazing statement for one who just said, "I saw you under a tree." There's lots going on here, right? It's more than just, he walked by and saw him under a tree. This is massive conversion. If I said I saw you at the supermarket, you wouldn't call me the Son of God, right? Right. So what's going on? And especially what's going on that is more than just come and see, because he came and saw and nothing happened. What happened that made him do more than see? He came and heard. Yo, keep going. "Rabbi, teacher, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." That's the one who Moses and the prophets wrote about, the one that they're waiting for, the Messiah, the guy who's going to rule from David's throne, fix the world, all this stuff. And hey, you've convinced me based on this supernatural little secret you just said that you're the one. Tell me what to do next, buddy. I'm on board. Now, here's where the debate about how you translate this text really comes in. Jesus then says, "Because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, you believe." Period or question mark? That's the question. Because, as you might know, Greek, when it was originally written, had no distinction between capitals or lowercase, and had absolutely no punctuation or spacing. So you just had capital letter after capital letter after capital letter all the way down the page. So when you come along and you're trying to translate this, you have to make a few decisions about, where the letters actually make words, and then where those words break into sentences. And then what the thrust of those sentences are. There are no commas, there are no question marks, there are no periods. So, does Jesus say, "Because I saw you under the fig tree, you believe"? Or does he say, "Because I saw you under the fig tree, you believe"? And then he says next, "You will see greater things than these." That's kind of an important twist there, because what word is there that has already shown up in the pericope a couple of times? You will Not this, but this. You will see. Come and see. He comes and sees. He doesn't believe. He gets to hear. He starts to believe. He says, yay. Jesus says, whatever, dude, I told you nothing, but you will see greater things than these. Where's all this going? You're going to see the heavens opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. What does that mean? When did that happen? Was it the mountain of transfiguration? Was it at the cross? Was it the resurrection? Was it the ascension? But nobody believes because they see, no matter what they see. And that's where we're going, especially at the end of the gospel, this distinction between faith and sight, where after he is risen from the dead, he's in the garden, while Peter and John go running off back to the disciples, having seen the empty tomb, and Mary's sitting there weeping, and Mary sees him and doesn't get it. She says, hey, you gardener guy, why'd you steal the body? And he says, words, her name even, Mary. Boom! She believes. A week later in the upper room, he shows up and there's Thomas, who said, unless I see and put my fingers with sight and touch to test who he is, I will not, I shan't not, I cannot believe. And Jesus shows up to him and he says, stop unbelieving and believe. And we're not even told whether or not Thomas touches him, but Thomas falls down. Says, my Lord and my God. Sounds familiar. You are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. And Jesus makes a statement, asks a question. You have believed because you have seen, or have you believed because you have seen? Blessed are those who have not seen yet have believed. And in between these two bookends, you have the entire Gospel of John, which is all about what? Seeing the miracles of Jesus? Nope. All the miracles and signs people are given aren't enough. They don't believe. But who does believe? Those who hear his words. And what does Jesus say about that? This is why I've come. He who loves me, what will he do? Keep my words. Hear my truth. Receive the faith the Spirit creates by my preaching. These things are written that you might hear them and believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and by believing you might have life in his name. So that for you and I and all the rest of us who actually didn't live in that time and didn't get to actually have this face-to-face experience with Jesus, the resurrected man, showing his scars and saying, yo, 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 I just killed death for you. The evidence enough of the testimony of the witnesses who saw it blesses us more than having seen, because sight wasn't enough. Most people who saw it wasn't enough. In fact, most people who saw Jesus wanted him dead. They killed him. Faith ain't about sight. Faith is about truth being truth, whether you can test it or not. And ultimately then, this does come down to the reality that when God says something, it's going to be true, even if it doesn't look true right away. Eat this fruit, gonna kill you. Don't do it. How can plain eating and drinking do these things? Back then it hurt. Now it actually does you some good. Whoa, whoa. Did I just make a connection? Yes. Shh, don't tell the Calvinists. Blessed are you who have not seen, but believe. Trust the word. It's good for you. Right on. End of show. So we're happy all the time, and everything's always good.